Today I'm sharing 5 tips for poreless, blurred, smooth, flawless skin. If you struggle at all with pores or texture on the skin, check out this video. You're not going to want to miss these tips. They are so good. So one of the first steps is to prime the skin, and when your main goal and objective here is to smooth the skin, to blur pores, finding the right blurring and pore minimizing primer is so important. You have lots of different options in terms of texture, formula, consistency. I have a few here that I'll walk through really quickly with you. So first up, we have the Smashbox Photo Finish Minimize Pores Primer. Now this primer is really good at mattifying the skin. It's going to mattify and blur out texture, give the skin a really smooth finish. It's oil-free and it will make your makeup last all day. So not only are you getting the smoothing benefit from it, but you're also getting the longevity from your makeup. This is what it looks like. So in terms of texture, you know, it's thick. It's not going to run down the skin. It's not a very hydrating primer, but you can feel the silkiness when you apply it on the skin, and you can just feel how smooth this makes the skin. So this is really great, especially if you have oily skin and you just want a really smooth, kind of lightweight finish to your primer. This is a great one. If you prefer more of like a solid kind of balm primer, this one from Tarte is really nice. This is the Timeless Smoothing Primer. So the way that you would use this is you would just kind of go in with your finger. This has a similar texture when it gets onto the skin. It has a very similar texture. It feels a little bit thicker and a little heavier to the skin, but it's very smoothing as well. Both of them are great options. This has a slightly more emollient texture to it. So if you're looking for something with a little bit more tackiness to it, this one would be really great. And I would recommend just applying this in the areas that is needed. So I wouldn't recommend going over the entire face with this product, but really just focusing it in those small areas where your pores tend to be more noticeable. That is one benefit of having it in this little pot. Just kind of makes it easy to just go right in there, and you can actually see the pores disappearing. It's kind of crazy. It's like an eraser almost. You can just see the pores and the texture smoothing out. Next up, we have the Vanish Airbrush Primer from Hourglass. This is a really nice one, especially if you like a little more kind of premium or luxe product. So this actually feels more like a lotion on the skin. It has a bit more hydrating feeling than any of the others. It feels more like a skincare product, but this is also going to help smooth out pores and texture on the skin. It's not as blurring as the first two, so just kind of note that. But if you really don't like that real silicy feel to your primers and you want something a little more hydrating, this is a great option. And last up, we have the NARS Soft Matte Primer. This also is kind of more like a lotion in a skincare product if you prefer that texture and that feel. And this is also going to mattify the skin and just give a really smooth matte look to the skin. It's also going to keep your makeup on all day. All 4 of these are really going to help keep your makeup on all day. These 2 are really great if you prefer more of like a skincare feel from your product. If you don't like that real silicone slip or silicone feel, I would kind of opt for one of these 2. Now, these are just 4 options, you guys. There are limitless products out there, so you certainly don't need to run out and buy any of these, but these are just a few that I wanted to grab and share. Okay, so I'm just going to take a little bit of the Hourglass Vanish Primer, and we're just going to put it right here on the forehead. I like to concentrate the primer here on my cheeks where my pores are large, and then right here in the center of my forehead, I do have more noticeable texture there. So I'm really concentrating this product in the areas that I need it and not really putting it all over the skin. Next, when it comes to foundation, the foundation formula that you choose and the finish is really important when it comes to the overall finish and smoothing and blurring of the skin. Typically, matte foundations are going to hide texture more so than really radiant or glowy foundations, but that doesn't mean that you have to wear a matte foundation. If you have really dry skin or you just don't like the way that a matte foundation looks on your skin, you want a little bit more of a glow, there are options for you, but just keep in mind that when the goal is to hide pores and texture, matte finishes are going to do a better job of that than real radiant or glowy finished foundations. Now, the foundation that I would reach for anytime I want smooth, poreless skin, I'm going to always grab my Dior Forever Matte Finish Foundation. This is a really, really nice matte foundation. It has a natural matte finish, so it's not going to look real heavy. It's not going to look cakey. Keep in mind how much you apply is going to impact that as well. If you apply too much of any product, it can look cakey and heavy, but I really enjoy this. I did want to provide a drugstore option for you you guys. And this doesn't really have a matte finish. This is a really great option if you want more of a natural finish or a slightly radiant finish. This is the L'Oreal True Match Super Blendable Foundation. We're gonna go ahead and do both of them so I can kind of show you what both of them look like. We'll start with the Dior. Now, it's not just the foundation formula, but it's also the foundation application and the technique that you use for applying your foundation. When you are trying to minimize pores and get a real smooth finish, I recommend a buffing foundation brush. This is the BK Beauty 106, and this is probably why it's my favorite foundation brush now that I'm saying this out loud and having this conversation about blurring pores, is because that is my skincare concern, is like pores and texture. And so I'm always looking to smooth that out. And I love this brush because of the way you can apply. So I like to go from the brush to the skin and kind of work it into the brush, just to kind of work it into the bristles. And then what I'll do is I will start in the center of the face. I always like to start in the center of the face because that is where I typically want the most coverage. That's where I tend to have a little bit more pinkness or redness or just, blemishes. That's where the sun hits the skin. So that's where I might have dark spots. I always start there. Wherever you start is where you're going to apply the most product. If you notice, I am just bouncing this brush onto the skin, okay? I'm not swiping it. I'm not painting it. I'm just bouncing it onto the skin. So what I'm doing is I'm really working that product into the skin rather than painting it over the skin. So when you do long stripes on the skin, if you have really large pores, sometimes what happens is you can just paint right over that and the pore is going to be really noticeable. But by pressing it and then afterwards buffing it into the skin like this, you're really working the product not only around the pore, but kind of into the pore. So you're getting just a full, smooth, seamless coverage. Now those primers are really going to help create a little barrier so that there's a smoothness. So you're not going to run into the issue so much of the foundation just kind of settling around it. But just an added little step is just bouncing it onto the skin and then buffing in little circles. What I love about the 106 brush is that it doesn't really take a lot of work or effort. You can literally just bounce this brush over the skin and it's going to give you the coverage and it's also going to blend at the same time. When I get to the jawline, that's when I'll go in little more buffing motions just to really sheer out and blend out. Same thing on the forehead, just pressing the brush into the skin and really working that foundation all over the skin so you don't have any areas that you kind of brushed across or over a pore, and everything just looks very smooth. Perfect. Okay, so we have foundation on this side. I haven't done concealer, so keep that in mind, but this is the Dior Forever Matte Foundation. Next, we're gonna go in with the L'Oreal Super Blendable Foundation. This is a beautiful foundation. I think this is a really great option for dry skin, for mature skin, really for anybody, but especially if you have dry, mature, or textured skin, this just gives a lot of like beautiful, healthy, natural life to the skin. I'm gonna do the same technique, you guys. I'm just gonna go in with my 106 brush, kind of work it in, and I'm going to, same technique, start in the center of the face and just press, press, press. Now you also want to be careful not to apply too much product. When we have too much product sitting on the skin, that will really magnify texture, whether it's pores or it's fine lines or it's wrinkles or it's acne scars, any area that the skin is not totally smooth. When you add a lot of product, it can magnify that. So make sure we're just using what we need. If you notice, I didn't grab all of the foundation in one swoop. I just got a little bit, and I'm really working all of it off of my brush onto the skin before I go back and grab more. If you notice, I'm doing the same technique here, you guys, just pressing, pressing, pressing. And then when I get to the jawline, that's when I will buff and blend out. Both of these foundations are beautiful. You cannot go wrong. I do think the one that's a little more versatile for all skin types would be the L'Oreal. Even if you have oily skin, I think this is a really nice option. It's really great for dry skin, whereas the Dior Forever, if you have dry skin, it's not one that I would recommend. Perfect. Okay. So I've applied the rest of my makeup. I have 2 more tips for you, 2 more steps to my pore blurring foundation routine. Now it comes to setting the foundation. Obviously I've applied my bronzer, my blush, the rest of my makeup. Let's talk about setting the foundation. Now I really like to look for really finely pressed or finely milled loose powders. You can use a pressed or a loose, whichever you prefer, but look for something that is actually going to blur the skin. skin. Some powders are better at doing it than others. I find that most powders that give a really poreless, smooth finish are going to also give more of a matte finish. I have a couple of my favorite here. The Givenchy Prisma Libre powder is really, really nice, and it's very lightweight. This is one of my favorites. I also have really taken to the One Size Loose translucent powder. I will say this gives a bit more of a powdered matte finish, like a flat matte porcelain doll finish, where this looks a little bit more natural. It's still matte, it's still mattifying and very pore blurring, but it looks a little bit more natural in terms of not as heavy or as matte. Not that this looks heavy, but when you're comparing the two, I'd say that this definitely gives more of that blanked out kind of flat matte look. When it comes to a pressed powder, one that I've really been loving lately is the Charlotte Tilbury Airbrushed Brightening Powder. This one's really nice. What I love about these three options is that they are really great and lightweight enough for under the eyes as well. Typically, I like to use the same powder underneath my eyes that I will use on my foundation. Now let's talk about applying this to the skin. It's a very simple task. It's not difficult. However, if you really want just really poreless, smooth skin, you want to apply it in a certain way. Today, we're going to use the One Size Loose one. That's what we're going to go in with today. Now, I am using the BK Beauty 113 brush. What I love about this brush is the shape of this brush. You can see that it is crimped here at the ferrule, making it more of a flat brush. Think of this as an upgrade to your powder puff. This is going to apply the powder similar to how you would with a powder puff, but it's just going to give an even more natural application versus a powder puff. So I've just got my powder here. I'm going to go straight into the lid. I'm going to coat both sides of the brush. Now, I always go and kind of blot off any excess product. Did you see all that powder that fell off this brush? Then what I'm going to recommend you do is go in and actually just press it onto the skin. You don't have to go that slow, but I'm just trying to be a little dramatic with my movements. Really just press it onto the skin versus sweeping. Sweeping like this is fine if you want a really light application, but if you're really looking for a poreless finish, and that's the goal here, go in and just press it over every area of the foundation. This is just gonna mattify everything, make it super smooth, and just set it in place. Like the texture is literally disappearing before my eyes, you guys. Completely before my eyes. Everything is just disappearing and my skin is like super smooth and poreless. So now that we have our makeup on, we want to set it all with a setting spray just to give that added insurance. You've spent all this time and gone through all these steps to make sure that your makeup is flawless. So why not make sure that it's flawless all day long? One of my favorite setting sprays if you want something more hydrating is the Jane Iredale Paw Mist Hydration Spray. This one is really nice. I've also been enjoying the Urban Decay All Nighter. This is the Cactus Flower Water. This is more of a hydrating one. The Urban Decay is known for its all-nighter setting spray if you really want something that just lasts all day. And then I also like the Charlotte Tilbury Airbrush setting spray. This is my second or third bottle. It's really nice if you just want a super matte, it's like hairspray for the skin. Today we're gonna go in with the Jane Iredale though one because my skin's a little dry. I did apply quite a bit of powder and this is just gonna give the skin a little bit more of a natural look, kind of cut down that powder finish so much, but you'll still have that nice poreless finish. And I'm just going to do a couple sprays. You can just kind of let it air dry, but one thing that I really love to do, this is just that little added extra step, is I love to take my foundation brush and just bounce it on top of the skin all over after you've applied that setting spray. This is basically like setting your setting spray. Just go in with the brush. I like the foundation because it's that buffing rounded shape, so it works all over the face really nicely, and I don't add any foundation to this. We're really just, you know, whatever was on here from earlier we're using. It'll just kind of do that last minute blend everything together. So if you had any areas where your contour or your blush or your bronzer wasn't perfectly blended, this is just that final little step. And I'm kind of doing this to excess. You definitely don't need to do it this much, but that's it. So those are my 5 steps to a poreless, smooth, flawless foundation routine. I hope you found this helpful. If you try any of these tips or if you try them all, let me know. Come back and give me your feedback. Let me know how they worked for you. Thank you so much for spending time with me in this video. I hope that you guys enjoyed it and I will see you in my next one. Have a beautiful day. Bye-bye.